Malaysia reaffirms commitment to fair trade amid new US tariffs. And also US-Israel bombing of Iran, a wrong move. Hello, good afternoon and salam Malaysia MADANI. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brendan Lepol. The United States has imposed a 25% tariff on Malaysia starting 1st August. This rate, which President Donald Trump described as far less than what's necessary to fix the trade deficit with Malaysia. In a letter to Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, shared on Trump's Truth social platform, Trump stated that Malaysia's current trade policies have made its trading relationship with the US largely one-sided and non-reciprocal. He also stated that he was ready to lower the 25% tariff if Malaysia changed its trade policies. Trump also mentioned that any decision by Malaysia to raise tariffs on US goods would result in an additional 25% tariff in response. Trump also encouraged greater Malaysian participation in the American economy, which he described as the #1 market in the world. There will be no tariff if Malaysia or companies within Malaysia decide to build or manufacture products within the United States. Trump issued similar letters to several other countries, including Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Thailand, and South Africa. In light of the recent announcement by the United States government regarding the imposition of a reciprocal tariff rate of 25% on Malaysian exports to the US effective 1st August, the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry MITI stated that they will continue discussions with its US counterparts in good faith to address outstanding issues, clarify the scope and impact of the announced tariffs, and pursue avenues for the timely conclusion of negotiations. In a statement, MITI stated, these efforts are still ongoing and reflect Malaysia's willingness to reach a fair and sustainable outcome for both parties. MITI acknowledged the concerns raised by the US regarding trade imbalances and market access. MITI believe that constructive engagement and dialogue remain the best path forward. Malaysia is committed to continuing engagement with the US towards a balanced, mutually beneficial and comprehensive trade agreement. The US is Malaysia's second largest trading partner and largest export destination, with total trade in 2024 rising nearly 30% to 324.9 billion ringgit. Exports to the US reached 198.7 billion ringgit, while imports rose to 126.3 billion ringgit. Meanwhile, Trump also hits other Asian nations with tariff. The White House stated it will implement a 25% tariff on all imports from Japan and South Korea. Trump revealed the move in letters addressed to both leaders, part of a broader effort to pressure trading partners into new agreements. White House Press Secretary Kerana said 12 more countries will receive similar letters in the coming days. Trump also signed an executive order delaying the previous 9 July deadline to reach tariff deals, now extended to 1st August.
Well, the president feels, generally speaking, that BRICS is seeking to undermine the interests of the United States. It's the president's utmost responsibility to put the interests of the United States first. That's how he views his job as president. So he's going to ensure that America is fairly treated on the world stage, and he'll take any action necessary to prevent countries from taking advantage of the United States and our people.
The administration also announced tariffs on Kazakhstan, South Africa, Laos and Myanmar, with rates ranging up to 40%. Trump reignited his trade war by threatening more than a dozen countries with higher tariffs Monday, but then said he may be flexible on his new August deadline to reach deals. Trump sent letters to trading partners, including key US allies Japan and South Korea, announcing that duties he had suspended in April would snap back even more steeply in 3 weeks.
Always subject to negotiate something that's fair, but we've talked to most of the countries, and pretty much they've had their way for many, many decades, as you know. And it was time that we just wanted fairness. This is not really equitable from our standpoint because it's just a small token by comparison to the damage that's been done over the years.
Countries including Indonesia, Bangladesh, Thailand and South Africa were slapped with duties ranging from 25% to 40%. So far, only two firm deals have emerged, with Britain and Vietnam, plus an agreement to dial back super high tit-for-tat tariffs with China.
Padatkan komputer untuk lebih penjimatan.
Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim expressed his concern over the joint United States-Israel bombing of Iran's main nuclear sites last month following the Gaza conflict, calling it a wrong move that disregards diplomacy and the resilience of the Iranian people. In an interview with France 24, 24, published on the network's digital platforms, the Prime Minister emphasized that resolving the Gaza issue required multilateral and fair negotiations, commenting on Western nations' demands, including France's, for Iran to abandon its nuclear program. Datuk Seri Anwar stressed that such calls must be fair and consistent. He said if Western countries want non-proliferation with the understanding that nuclear technology shouldn't be weaponized, it must be applied consistently. He added that their contradictions and hypocrisy have become too apparent and people no longer accept them. The Prime Minister also explained he had met Hamas leaders to facilitate dialogue through Qatar, Egypt and the US, adding that there was nothing wrong with pursuing a peace deal through negotiation. On criticism that he has been more vocal on Gaza than the war in Ukraine, Datuk Seri Anwar rejected claims of double standards by saying that Malaysia has expressed its position clearly, including having spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin to pursue negotiations. Meanwhile, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says the world must act to stop what he describes as an Israeli genocide in Gaza, as leaders from 10 emerging BRICS nations gathered in Rio de Janeiro. Lula said the world cannot remain indifferent to the genocide carried out by Israel in Gaza, the indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians and the use of hunger as a weapon of war. He also offered fierce criticism of Israel's actions, as Israel's military campaign has killed at least 57,420 people in Gaza, who were mostly civilians. Leaders in Rio de Janeiro also called for reform of traditional weapons, while representing BRICS as a defender of multilateral diplomacy in an increasingly fractured world. Malaysia believes that vaccine access, strong public health system and the regulation of global medical supply chains are central to both national stability and international security. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim stressed that when governments divert limited resources from essential services such as healthcare and clean water to service historical debts, financial systems designed to foster development instead hinder progress. Speaking during his intervention at the Environment COP30 and Global Health session of the 17 BRICS Leaders Summit, Datuk Seri Anwar said the fact that a child's chance of surviving past the age of 5 is still largely determined by GDP per capita represents a failure for the whole world. The Prime Minister also voiced Malaysia's support for deeper collaboration between BRICS and ASEAN to strengthen surveillance, accelerate knowledge transfer and build resilience across borders. He reaffirmed Malaysia's commitment to a credible and just low-carbon transition, highlighting the country's pledge to reduce emissions intensity by 45% by 2030 and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Datuk Seri Anwar said Malaysia is also assessing the role of carbon capture. utilization and storage (CCUS) in decarbonizing industry, with policy frameworks currently being developed. Ahead of COP30 in Belém, Brazil this November, Dato Sri Anwar called for a shift from aspiration to execution. On another note, Malaysia is committed to strengthening cooperation in economics, trade and investment with BRICS countries, especially with the great potential of artificial intelligence (AI), which needs to be harnessed for inclusive development. With ASEAN's digital economy expected to reach $2 trillion by 2030, Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI, Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz described it as a golden opportunity that cannot be wasted. He said the side meetings with BRICS partner countries and business leaders open up space for Malaysian companies to explore markets and investments opportunities in future-oriented sectors. He also said that MITI would continue to facilitate and support local companies to continue to boldly explore new markets. In addition, Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul said Malaysia's commitment is to strengthen a rules-based and inclusive trading system, as well as build a more just and progressive global economic future. Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul was among the members of the delegation led by Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim to the 17th BRICS Leaders Summit hosted by Brazil. Prime Minister Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim official visits to Italy, France and Brazil have successfully met their intended objectives. Besides reinforcing bilateral ties, the visits also contributed to efforts to attract investments and boost Malaysia's trade relations. The visit to Italy alone generated over 8 billion ringgit in potential investments, while the engagements in France brought in 4 billion ringgit. Prime Minister's inaugural official visit to Italy came at the invitation of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, aimed at deepening bilateral relations across a broad range of sectors. While investments and trade were key priorities, Dato Sri Anwar, who is also Finance Minister, said the trip also provided an opportunity to address geopolitical issues. The visit to Brazil also allowed Dato Sri Anwar to meet with several world leaders ahead and heads of international organizations. In Rio de Janeiro, the Prime Minister held discussion with South African President and 3 counterparts from India, Vietnam and Egypt.
Bersihkan penapis penghawa dingin dan tetapkan 24 darjah Celsius untuk lebih jimat.
And up next, Russian minister sacked by Putin, found dead. Stay with us. Israel struck Houthi targets at 3 Yemeni ports and a power plant early on Monday in its first attack on Yemen in nearly a month. The strikes hit the ports of Hodeidah, Ras Isa and Salif, as well as the Ras Kantib power plant on the coast. Israel's military released video showing what it says was a strike on a vessel that had been seized by the Houthis at Ras Isa port in Yemen's western coastal town of Al Jazeera. Since the start of the war in Gaza in October 2023, the Houthis have fired at Israel and at shipping in the Red Sea, disrupting global trade in what the group says are acts of solidarity with the Palestinians. Most of the dozens of missiles and drones fired toward Israel have been intercepted or fallen short. Israel has carried out a series of retaliatory strikes. On Monday, a cargo ship was struck with gunfire, rockets and explosive-laden remote-controlled boats and sunk by Houthis in the Red Sea. The Houthis claimed responsibility for Sunday's assault and said they had allowed the 19 crew members to disembark from the Liberian-flagged bulk carrier. All crew were rescued by a passing merchant vessel and were expected to arrive in Djibouti later on Monday. The United States will send more weapons to Ukraine after the White House announced a halt to some arms shipments for Kyiv the previous week. US President Donald Trump said Ukraine was getting hit very hard by Russia and needed to be able to defend itself.
They're getting hit very hard now. They're getting hit very hard. We're going to have to send more weapons. Yeah, defensive weapons primarily, but they're getting hit very, very hard. It's very sad. So many people are dying in that mess.
Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Russia's smaller neighbor in 2022 and has shown little willingness to end the conflict, despite pressure from Trump. Ukraine is contending with some of Russia's largest missile and drone attacks of the three-year war, and a halt to the provision of munitions pose a potentially serious challenge for Kyiv. Russia's former transport minister Roman Starovoyt killed himself hours after President Vladimir Putin fired him. The investigative committee stated that the body of former transport minister was found in his private car with a gunshot wound in the Odintsovo district. Hours earlier, the Kremlin published a decree signed by Putin to relieve Starovoyt of his duties. Starovoyt's firing came after another weekend of travel chaos at Russian airports following Ukrainian drone attacks. Starovoyt was a native of the Kursk region and often appeared in public meetings with Putin during the Ukraine offensive. The Kremlin has not yet commented on Starovoyt's death. A 27-year-old Michigan man was shot dead by police after opening fire with an assault rifle on a U.S. Border Patrol station in the southern Texas city of McAllen on Monday. The man, identified as Ryan Luis Mosqueda, fired dozens of rounds at the entrance of the facility shortly before 6 a.m., prompting U.S. Border Patrol agents return fire. McAllen Police Chief Victor Rodriguez said a police officer was shot in the knee during the exchange of fire and was taken to hospital. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said a Border Patrol employee was also injured. Law enforcement found additional assault firearms and more ammunition in Mosqueda's Chevrolet passenger car, which was parked nearby. The facility where the shooting took place houses Border Patrol's Special Operations teams. The FBI is leading the investigation as it involved an attack on federal officers and a federal building, Rodriguez said. Flights at the nearby McAllen International Airport were delayed for several hours as law enforcement secured the area. The U.S. Army deployed barbed wire on top of the border wall with Mexico on Monday, and according to the Hope Border Institute, the measure has prompted criticism for posing a threat to both migrants and border-side communities. Its Assistant Director for Global Migration, Jesus De La Torre, said instead of deploying the barbed wires, the U.S. should invest in cheaper and safer processes.
These measures provide safety for no one in the community, nor for the migrants, nor for the agents. And instead of deploying this barbed wire and investing in these deadly measures, we should invest in cheaper and safer processes, like allowing people to seek safety according to our law in our southern border, and allowing them to have a process so everyone could seek safety and protection without the need to risk their life, including for our agents at the border.
In February, U.S. Marines were also seen reinforcing the wall's steel columns with barbed wire in Tijuana at the border with California. At least 22 people were injured after a fire broke out on Monday in a key telecoms data center in Cairo, as disruptions of communications across the capital were recorded. People were unable to make phone calls, and a major internet disruption was registered, with network data showed national connectivity at 62% of ordinary levels. The Health Ministry also posted alternative numbers for ambulance services across different governorates in case people were unable to reach its main hotline. Besides phone calls, some digital banking services were also impacted, including credit cards, ATM machines and online transactions. It was reported that a fire broke out in one of the equipment rooms at the Ramses switchboard of the telecom Egypt company Atel CA. Services is expected to be restored over the next few hours after power to the whole building was cut off as a safety measure. The state news agency MENA said the fire had been prevented from spreading to the entire building and neighboring rooftops. An initial examination indicated that the fire was likely to have been caused by an electrical short circuit.
Lebih menjimatkan memasak dengan cerik penuh.
Moving on to sports, Modric to join AC Milan from Real Madrid. Stay with us. A teary-eyed Angel Di Maria was introduced as the latest signing by Rosario Central on Monday, 18 years after he left his boyhood club. Di Maria, who helped Argentina win the 2022 World Cup, always wanted to return to Rosario, but he received death threats from drug dealer gangs. Located 300 kilometers north of Buenos Aires, Rosario is a hub of violent crime and clashes between groups seeking to monopolize the drug trade. Despite the club's efforts to limit the event to the media, many fans gathered outside to welcome him. Earlier in the day, Di Maria completed his first training session with the team in Arroyo Seco and described it as a positive start. Di Maria also mentioned that winning a title with Rosario Central is one of his main goals. Di Maria joined Rosario Central when he was aged 4 and made his professional debut with the club at 17 in 2005. After winning the 2007 Under-17 World Cup, he was sold to Benfica. He went on to play for Real Madrid, Manchester United, Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain and Benfica for a second time and collected nearly 30 trophies. He scored against France in the 2022 World Cup final in Qatar and won the last two Copa Americas. Di Maria is coming off a Club World Cup appearance with Benfica. He scored 3 goals for the Portuguese side, which was eliminated by Chelsea in the round of 16. Real Madrid's Croatia captain Luka Modric will join AC Milan after the Club World Cup. The Serie A club's newly appointed manager Massimiliano Allegri confirmed early today. The move means the 39-year-old midfielder, who announced in May that he would be leaving Real Madrid after the Club World Cup, will bring his 13-year spell at the Spanish Giants to a close. Modric, the 2018 Ballon d'Or winner, will join a Milan side looking to bounce back from a disappointing campaign that saw them finish 8th and miss out on European competition. The Italian, who has joined Milan for a second time after replacing the sacked Sergio Conceição at the end of May, also outlined some key changes to the squad ahead of the new season. Netherlands midfielder Tijani Reinders was sold to Manchester City in June, while France left-back Theo Hernandez could be on his way to Saudi Pro League side Al Hilal. While Reinders and Hernandez won't be part of the team next season, Allegri said goalkeeper Mike Maignan and forward Rafael Leao seem willing to stay. Milan will kick off their Serie A campaign on 23rd August with a home fixture against Cremonese. Allegri, who previously guided Milan to a Serie A title in the 2010-11 season, last managed Juventus. And in tennis, top seed Jannik Sinner struggled with an elbow problem and was given an almighty scare before advancing to the quarterfinals of Wimbledon after a cruel twist of fate for his 19th-seed opponent, Grigor Dimitrov, who retired injured at 2 sets up. Well, Novak Djokovic continued his quest for Grand Slam glory at the All England club with a battling victory over Alex de Minaur. The drama was reserved for the evening clash on centre court as Dimitrov, who had pulled out injured in his last 4 majors, played exquisite tennis to go up 6-3, 7-5, 2-all, but then crashed to the ground after a big ace to hold serve. Sinner, who had been hampered for much of the contest by a right elbow issue, was left feeling sorry for his opponent, who threw in the towel after a short assessment by a doctor. Sinner next faces American 10-seed Ben Shelton, who beat another Italian, Lorenzo Sonego, 3-6, 6-1, 7-6, 7-5, to advance to the quarterfinals at Wimbledon for the first time. Earlier, 6-seed Djokovic endured a nightmare start to his match against Australian 11th seed Alex de Minaur, but battled back to win 1-6, 6-4, 6-4, and 6-4. Fresh from his 100th win at Wimbledon on Saturday, making him the 3rd player to achieve the feat after Martina Navratilova and Roger Federer. Djokovic reached his 16th quarterfinal at the tournament. Aged 38, the Serb is aiming to win a record 25th major title, breaking a tie with the long-retired Margaret Court, and to equal Federer's record of 8 men's crowns at the All England club. That would make him the oldest Grand Slam singles champion in the Open era.
1-6, 6-4, 6-4, 6-4.
Team Melier won the 3rd stage of the Tour de France on Monday after a sprint finish that resulted in a number of riders crashing. Saw the Belgian edge just ahead of Jonathan Milan. The Soudal quick-step rider needed a photo finish to confirm he ended narrowly in front of Italian Milan at the finish line in the coastal city of Dunkirk. The stage took a dramatic turn 60 kilometers from the end when Belgian rider Jasper Philipsen withdrew from the tour after hitting the road hard following contact with Brian Koka during an intermediate sprint. The Alpecin de Koning rider had his jersey ripped in several places and suffered bloody scrapes. He was attended by the race doctor shortly afterwards. Philipsen was also wearing the green jersey, ends his tour on a sour note, despite having won the opening stage on Saturday. The peloton rode closely together for most of the 178.3-kilometer flat stage from Valenciennes to Dunkirk. Seemingly cautious, the riders held back from making any decisive moves, with nearly the entire group staying in the peloton until the final stretch, setting up a mass sprint finish that ended with several riders crashing in the closing meters. Germany's Phil Bauhaus of Bahrain Victorious was 3rd, while Milan took the green jersey following Philipsen's withdrawal. And that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, Malaysia reaffirms commitment to fair trade amid new US tariffs. Till then, I'm Brandon Lepal, Malaysia MADANI, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thanks for watching.